Grand Rising Soul Family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Brothers and sisters, we have an amazing and inspiring guest today by the name of Yona FrenchHawk. I want to thank Yona for being here today and also for joining us for opening ceremony at Convergence 7 out at Camp Daniel Boone in North Carolina. We circled with 450 men, and it was a moment. It was a moment of opening ceremony that was very special for us as Sacred Sons, to have the youth, to have our elders, and to have Yona there to bless the way for us for our time together. So with that, our guest today, Yona is a full-blooded Cherokee wisdom keeper. He is a respected ceremonialist and community leader, and he is keeping his traditions alive by being a bridge from the ancient past to the ancient future. Please welcome Yona FrenchHawk.
Thank you, Adam. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for the kind words. And I just want to say in the beginning that, it's been a blessing in my life to have come in contact with you and your community, and ever since that initial connection, my world has expanded greatly.
It's an honor. It's an honor. It's an honor for us. And when we brought you in, immediately I saw the brothers calling you uncle, calling you out, seeking that eldership and that wisdom from you. What did that feel like to receive that?
I'm still trying that skin on. From time to time in ceremonies, people will call me grandfather. I've been called uncle a lot, and I'm getting used to it. Stepping into eldership.
Yeah.
So it's getting used to. I'm so used to calling everyone brother and sister. Right. So I'm just trying to find that alignment. Say, hey, uncle, nephew, instead of brother, I just say whatever I feel.
Yeah, well, I think the reflection there is that we need you. Like the young generation, the generation that's coming up right now is looking for leadership, and it may not look like what we thought it would. We're looking for wisdom. We're looking for real deep connection to the land, to elements, and to traditions that I feel like many of us grew up in a tribeless way, in a culture that was fabricated, with plastic and Nickelodeon and all the other things we grew up with, and so here we are, and we're looking to deepen and connect to these indigenous traditions. And, today, as we speak, I'd love to get to know a little bit more about you. But just from here, how does it feel for you to be in a place to share these traditions, to share your teachings, and to share ceremony?
It feels very good to be here, because I laugh at the ironies and the so-called the education I had as a child. But because I'm just a generation past of my parents being forced Christianity, force-fed Jesus, force-fed English, math, the reading, writing, arithmetic, that wasn't their choice.
Right.
And so I have some of that DNA in me of resistance. And my great grandfather, Yona Guska, who was the chief of the Cherokee at the time of the Trail of Tears removal, was the chief of our tribe that said, for those Cherokees that don't want to go, come with me, and we're going to stay. And so that's in my DNA of being steadfast. But I also have my maternal grandfather, who was born in Oklahoma, walked back in the early 1900s and came home from my mother's side. So I have both Eastern Band and Western Band in my DNA. But I got off the school bus and came home and watched the Flintstones and Gilligan's Islands. And, I grew up on the after school specials. And but it wasn't as distracting then, because here in the mountains, we only had 2.5 channels. This was before cable,
Right.
before internet. And if there was nothing on besides preaching, here in the South, you got a lot of Billy Graham crusades,
Right.
and preaching, and very Bible Belt messages here in the South. And so, you know, I also grew up with a grandfather that grew up in the woods and didn't have a TV and didn't care to have one. That didn't speak English and had no desire to learn English. And he might have known what 1 + 1 was, but he didn't know it as 1 + 1. He just knew togetherness. That this goes together and this goes together.
Yeah. So you grew up in that Eastern Band there in the Smoky Mountains. And so was your grandfather, was he the one that maybe passed you the bundle or passed you some of the songs and the teachings in that way? How, you know, as a child, even though you're watching Gilligan's Island, were you also learning the traditions?
Oh yeah, that was my big thing. You know, my father was a Southern Baptist preacher.
Okay.
And that's because, you know, back then in the boarding schools, if you didn't accept Jesus Christ as your savior, you were basically an indentured slave to the mission. You were still a savage if you didn't accept Christ. If you didn't accept Christ in these boarding schools, they didn't let you go. You became a slave. So my father found a way. He said, okay, I'll go along with this Christianity thing just to get me out of here. And in our church, my dad read from the Cherokee Bible. It was written in the Cherokee language. Our hymn books were written in the Cherokee language, Nail at the Cross, Amazing Grace, all of that. We sang in Cherokee.
Wow.
And one day my dad said there were missionaries that would sit there with notebooks and make sure that he spoke the word of God as they taught it to him. They were his monitors. But my dad also knew that they didn't speak Cherokee. So like many other traditions across the world, when the invaders came in, they found a way to keep their sacred names alive by, you know, St. Michael's Mountain was once Katua, our most sacred mountain. But if we call it Katua now, they'll punish us and cut our hair and wash our mouths out with soap. So we'll call it St. Michael's Mountain now. But in our language, we'll always say Katua. So when the white people or the missionaries think Katua is us saying, honoring St. Michael's in our language, when we're really saying the true name of our spirits. So, you know, I grew up in a culture where I straddled that line between Jesus and nature. Yeah. My grandfather would go out in the woods and just listen, and always encourage me to just listen. And that's how I learned how to tell stories.
And so have you come to a sense of peace with any of that? You know, I hear the recent stories, all the bodies that have been found in the Canadian boarding schools as well. I mean, this was happening just 50, 60, well, at this point, let's just call it a generation ago.
Yes.
And it's happening all the way up until the 1990s, still in Canada.
Yes.
And so when I see you engaging, when I see you giving teachings and storytelling, I feel a sense of oneness and togetherness. But how did you maybe integrate that experience so that you could, you know, I don't want to project that you found peace with it, but how have you integrated that experience?
Well, thank you for saying that, because I don't know if I found peace, but I found balance and harmony and moving forward.
Yeah.
And being able to look in the mirror and forgive myself for, you know, just sometimes atrocious things I think of revenge for what happened to my people. Yeah. And looking at myself like, well, you know what? I have primal DNA in me. So it stands to reason that I would respond that way and have these feelings just as a natural evolution of our human feelings.
Yeah.
So I don't say, oh, I don't get mad, or I don't have hatred. I just don't like using that word HATE, because it feels like a barb in my spirit when I use that word. To move past and to really step into forgiveness and acceptance, because forgiveness and acceptance are two entirely different notions. Yeah. And to accept that history repeats itself, and that what happened to my people happened to those people that came and did it to us. It was a learned behavior, and it's happened to all of us across this earth at some point. So not to single myself out and join in with everyone and said, hey, can we all just look in the mirror and find balance and harmony and then come together and meet and maybe sit in silence instead of letting this human language get in our way? Because that's what brought us together in the beginning, was just the wind and the light and the spirit of beauty and life. That's the harmony. Yeah. And that's what I've learned through my experience of growing up in the woods with a grandfather that just was taught by the mother, and a father that listened to Jesus but was raised by the mother. Yeah. And found a way to bridge the two.
Wow. Your grandfather, what was the let's see, when you think back, being a boy out in the woods listening, what message do you carry from your grandfather? What did that instill in you?
The first flash I got was that he would always say in Cherokee, if you can't improve upon the silence, then remain still. And whenever I was a child, there was a rock. My grandfather and our family had about 300 acres of land, mountain land, here in the Smoky Mountains. And my grandfather had a favorite rock where there was a pool of water. There was a stream that came down off the top of the mountain on our land. And the source that was at the top of our land, it was from an underground, under mountain lake. So we'd go sit in this stream and put our feet in the water and sit on that rock. And as a little boy, whenever you get ready to speak, you take that breath when you get ready to say something. And he would always stop me and just point, just. Okay, I'll sit here. But then I started listening. And then a few minutes later, he would say, Yona, tell me what you heard. What did they tell you? They were talking to me, I guess. Huh, okay, well, hold on a second. Well, you know, Grandpa, up here, coming down off the mountains, I can hear the squirrels coming because the sun's about to go down, and they come down for their water about this time of day, and I can hear them. They're on their way. I said, but wait, they stopped. They felt threatened by something from over there. There's something in the woods over there that concerns these squirrel people, and they're hesitant about coming down and getting water. It might be a cat. It might be a bobcat. I said, I smell something. I smell something that has hair. And squirrels don't like those bobcats. Because the bobcats, I've seen it, you know, the squirrels will come down to get water and the bobcats will pounce on them.
Yeah.
Because all of nature knows that whenever the sun goes down, the animals come to get water for the night. And I listened to the deers, and I would tell my grandfather, you know, and the squirrels got scared because there's a cat over there, I believe, Grandpa. And there's a deer over here moving carefully, listening to this conversation. It's walking real slow, watching what's happening because everybody's coming to get water. And that taught me that, you know, of nature's just how it works. You know, you have predators, you have unsuspecting victims, not even victims, but we all have a role to play in nature. And whether my grandfather and I are sitting on that rock to see it and hear it, it happens anyway. And that's just the true nature of accepting. And that's what leads me to what they call forgiveness, to what's going on in the world today. Is just to be in balance with that. Evolution happens, and hopefully we evolve in a good way with it to really take us back to that ancient past. And that's our ancient future, is the journey back. And so that's a bridge answer to that.
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful vision. I was there. I was there for for a moment with you. And it's to say, you know, it's not that it's the bobcat is good or bad. It,
No.
this is a part of the cycle of life. And so I want to stay here for a minute because we're with the ancestors, we're with nature, and you are someone who, as a ceremonialist, promotes ancestral healing, and I would say even helps others to come into contact with their ancestors. And so, how do we do that? How do we do that in a good way, in a way of honoring them, but not to put them on a pedestal or, you know, make them into something that they're not? But how do we honor our ancestors in a good way?
Well, I'm very fond of saying in our ceremonies, I'm also a minister in a church here in Nashville, and I share this with them as well as in our sweat lodge communities and other gatherings that we have of you know, our ancestors prayed for an abundant, prosperous, loving, compassionate life. And what better way to honor that prayer of our ancestors than to live that life, to live life in abundance and prosperity and love and compassion, you know, because that's, to me, that's the true essence of what do you hear in the wind? You know, because I don't know if you were at that sweat, but, you know, we were talking about, and I've used this in lodge about how, you know, the earth, you know, we got Twitter from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all the resources that go into building this laptop has been here from the beginning.
Yeah.
So we've been tweeting messages through the wind from the very beginning of time. Global followers, whether you know you're following or not. Just like these phones, all of a sudden you get potential spam caller. They might be calling you for saying you want $1 million. You don't know, but it says potential spam caller. Let that go to voicemail or just junk mail. And I think that sometimes we got so complacent in life that we miss the calls and the signs and the messages that are being sent to us because we become so field focused, area focused on our life. I have to make this much money. I have to have this good looking woman. I have to have this many kids. They have to dress in these clothes. They have to eat this food. And we've divided ourselves from community and for technology. And it's happening for a reason. And I take part in it.
Yeah.
I participate. I spend money on the things that are destroying the resources on this earth and trying to be more conscious about how to do that. So, you know, I'm out doing things too that are doing the very things I'm trying to correct.
Right.
And I think that that's the vulnerability in each of us that it takes to move into that global harmony, is to accept that we're just human. We all acknowledge it. But just, we don't have to live perfectly, but impeccably to our own integrity. You know, we're products of our own environment. Take what you've learned and go with it in the best way you can. And to see people that we share this in ceremony too, of when people ask me when they have difficulties, is sometimes we just have to learn how to meet people where they are instead of where we expect them to be or hope them to be. It doesn't mean we have to give our whole spirit energy to them, but to acknowledge them and the situations they're in. And hopefully our kindness and our compassion, living the prayer of our ancestors, hopefully living that kindness, love, and compassion will shine some light in their darkness. If that's darkness at all, I don't know. They're just on their own path. So I'm not here to say they're living at a deficit or anything. I just know that where I stand in the light, I would love others to stand in this light too, because it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and we feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel the energy when we do stand in circle, when we are standing in silence, just to be together. I'd like to say this in Sacred Sons because we do a lot of work what we call masculine alchemy and men's work. And it's actually just in being together that the healing begins. It's just in making the agreement to come together in unity that the healing begins. You know?
Well, one thing I learned in that opening ceremony was I've been reluctant in the past to do breath work because number one, I feel like somebody's telling me what to do. But the experience I've had have been in a group situation, and I get distracted by other people because other people have their own ways of breathing. You have the heavy breathers, and you have the mules, and then you have the chickens, and you hear all these different. It sounds like an animal farm in a way. Whenever it's a group setting where people just have their own way of expressing their breath, so group situation breath journeys haven't done that much for me. And whenever you got up there and are you in agreement? And everybody, yes, that valley just trembled with, to me, it felt like Mother Earth saying, yes, sing some more, sing more, child, sing more. And to feel that. And then the Hane, to acknowledge, I'm here. Here I am. It's me. It's me, Hane. You know, and to empower. And Robbie's doing that in the sweat lodges now. And with his groups up at Mandala Springs, he's bringing that in. That's one of their mantras they use now is the Hane.
Because it's Hane. Wow.
Hane on this land. You know, it's on the woods recognize that language.
I would just love to say at Sacred Sons, we have this mantra that opens up some of our larger gatherings, which is, I am here, you are here, we are here. And at Convergence 7, we had an inner circle of all of the youth. And then we had another ring of all of the leaders and elders. And then we had another ring of all of the brothers participating. And so we had the youth lead the chant, I am here, I am here, you are here, you are here, we are here, we are here. And we're doing that and building that energy. And then Yona comes up on the mic, Hane, you know, and in that same loving frequency of I am here that we're sharing, and we're in that sense, we're letting them know. And you even said at one point, let them know, let your ancestors, let the mountains and the trees know that we're here. I just felt like it was such a beautiful moment because that's a part of the Sacred Sons culture that we're building here. And you brought Hane in so beautifully.
Well, thank you for that, because I don't have a script for anything I do.
Yeah.
Nothing. Even whenever I preach at church, I share a message. I don't preach. I share a message. And, you know, they know me in my community. You know, Yona's, he shoots from the hip.
Yeah.
You know, I might carry a notebook with me, but I'll put it down and I never reference any of my notes. I just flow.
Yes.
And I feel that that's what I felt at Sacred Sons at the gathering here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Was a flow and a community of, and I feel that the community of men just being present in the masculine energy was astounding for me. And I needed that booster. Yeah. I needed that because my immunities were waning. My immunities in faith and life, my faith in humanity, my immunities were down and I was feeling ill. And that rejuvenated me as medicine for me. So thank you as well, because this is a two-way street.
Oh yeah.
You know, I showed up for a reason too. That's part of the great mystery. And it's unfolding, you know, the music and the website, everything, the technology that's being opened to me. Yeah. And me opening my heart in the other way. so that we can open our hearts and gifts to one another and an equal exchange. And we talk about that in our community, sacred reciprocity, like energy for like energy. And, and it's become a tender topic because humility fits into that. The lesson we talk about of completing the cycle of gratitude, when someone says, thank you, be sure to say you're welcome first, and then be humble. Because, I had that fire tender said, people trying to tell them, thank you, thank you, thank you. And, oh, no, I'd have done it for anybody. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
No. And he's like, nobody appreciates me, Yona. I said, you know why? Because I watch you. And every time someone tries to give you appreciation, you reject it.
Right.
I said, so next time, receive it.
We as men, it's hard to receive for us sometimes, isn't it? We love to provide and give, and sometimes give all of ourselves to a fault. But especially for men, that act of receiving, even in the form of a thank you, you're welcome. Sometimes we resist that because we want so much to give of ourselves. And it's good practice, like you said, to actually be in reciprocity. This is bringing harmony back to the cycle.
Well, we did a ceremony not long ago because that planted a seed in me. And about a month later, we put out a message a couple of weeks later for people to set an intention for how much gratitude have you left out in the world? That energy's still out there. When we speak, it's like the internet. Once you put it out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
And how many times have people said thank you, and you, in your own way, whether you did it deliberately or not, or just from habit, let's do a ceremony of acknowledging that gratitude and receiving it, and clearing the air, taking that smog, that gratitude that's gone unnoticed and unappreciated. Let's bring it in and appreciate it, because it's just like other spirits that people say, oh, this house is haunted. And all that spirit really needs is to be acknowledged and accepted, and maybe a portal to move on. But if we mystify it and continue to feed the mystery of it, then it's going to continue to live in mystery.
Yeah.
So once we identify what we're doing and why, I feel this is what cleanses that air, so that, hey, we want to learn more gratitude. Okay, well, there's some floating out here. Claim some.
Claim some.
Claim some. Let's pray. Let's go into this sacred sweat lodge where all elements of life, the fire, the earth, the water, and the air, are all brought together inside the womb of Mother Earth. And when we add the water, that steam is the sacred breath of life, the breath of Creator. And we have the ability to clear up all the pollution in the world spiritually, energetically.
Yeah.
And to clear space for that higher vibration of light. And that's, I believe that's my life's passion. I don't work anymore. I just show up every day in passion.
Ceremony of life.
Yes.
Can I ask you, when did a Inipi or sweat lodge ceremony find you in your life? What was your first sit?
Well, my first actual sweat lodge, because in the Cherokee community, children are welcome, but it's kind of like it's sacred space. There's no running around. There's work to be done. And if you're not doing work, then respect the space. Sit in prayer, support the fire. You don't run around. So as kids, we were tasked with gathering the wood, fetching the water for the sweat, gathering stones if we needed stones, and we'd make a competition out of it. But as a child, you had to be invited in by the elders, and the elders would watch you based upon how you performed. And not a qualification, but who's ready for this? Right. Who really goes out and gives and wants to give to this ceremony by gathering wood and getting water and loving to do it, being of service. And then I was 8 years old when I was first invited in by my grandfather. My grandfather was, for the lack of a better word, a shaman, a medicine man. He was the head medicine man of all 7 clans of the Cherokee. all the medicine people, all medicine men and women, the heads of their clans would come to my grandfather's place, and he would sit with them in ceremony and medicine. And so at 8 years old, I was invited in by my elders to sit in medicine lodge. Ours are built into the ground. They're not like the common Lakota type.
Right.
But at 8 years old and at 12 years old, I was handed the ladle by my grandfather to pour lodge for these medicine elders.
Wow.
So I've been pouring water for nearly 50 years in that way of just being raised in that tradition. It wasn't, I was being groomed as a child for this.
Wow.
When I was in the church, I was being groomed to be a preacher. Until I quit going to church, a lot of people thought I was going to be the next young preacher in Cherokee. Because my dad was a preacher, my grandpa was a preacher. They fell under that colonist regime.
Yeah.
And not that I'm trying to break ties to that, because there was a lot of good that came from that. And I'm not saying it was right, but I'm saying it's a stabilizer to the foundation that we know now. And so that's why I'm just passionate about what I do, and that's why I can look at what happened to my people and find compassion for those that came and did it to us. And just like the young woman at Standing Rock several years ago, 15-year-old Navajo girl asked people, there's like 8,000 people. She said, everybody that identifies with Caucasian, please stand up. And well over half the people stood up. And she said, I want to tell you from my heart, you don't have to apologize to me anymore for your ancestors. Go home, look in the mirror, and forgive yourself. And that's how we'll start this journey together. Forgive yourself, regardless of what any of this looks like, or the names or the verbiage that we put to our stories.
Yeah.
So, that's what I think I've learned from my grandfather the most, is sitting in that silence and, listening to life happen. And that's all we do now. We just do it on a larger level with the computer age. The wind looks like
The wind looks like ones and zeros, like the Matrix.
Ones and zero, yeah, binary. It is a binary code, and life always has been.
Yeah, but it's important for us to come out of that sense of modernity from time to time and get back connected to the elements. I want to say Lakota Sweat Lodge and EP ceremony is really what got me on my path. I've always felt a connection to spirit and source since I was a young child, but that particular ceremony, there's nothing quite like it, truly. And do you have any feelings or thoughts about how you see I know the Lakota version of Sweat Lodge has become kind of popular all around the world, and there's many types of communities pouring. What is your sense around that? You came from the tradition, from the actual lineage, and now here it's being spread around the world. What are your thoughts around that?
Have you ever heard of a book called Valley of the Horses?
No.
Clan of the Cave Bear, Clan of the Cave Bear, and all that.
Clan of the Cave Bear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there was another book in that series called Valley of the Horses. And in one of the chapters, it opened up, and this is what got me, was the chapter opened up, and I was like, wow. And it's taking place in Siberia, in Russia, Siberian Russia. And by the time I got done with the chapter, I was like, wow, she just guided me through a sweat lodge. And I have a friend that was a history professor out of San Diego State, and he and I used to work together. And he invited me to dinner one night, and my partner and I, and he showed us this picture, and it looked like an Indian warrior. He had the loincloth and the feathers and the spear and the bow and arrow, and he's like, he said, "What tribe do you think this guy's from, Yona?" And I looked at him, and he had markings on him, and I guess Comanche. He looked like a Comanche warrior. He's like, "This is a 16th century Siberian warrior."
Wow. Wow.
And so and he goes into the story about the Bering Ice Strait, and the whole population of the earth, and we all have theories, and we all know what we believe and what we don't believe,
and we've all forgotten.
Sure.
The reality is we are people with amnesia who've forgotten truly where we've come from.
Sure. And it is, and there are no actual witnesses anymore except for the mother, and until we go back to her language will we truly understand what was done and how it evolved.
Yes.
And so that's, to me, our return to silence and oneness with that first language that we all know it. That's why we take a deep breath when we see something beautiful like a sunset or a shooting star. That's the loudest voice in the universe to me.
Yeah. So here we are in the ancient future of 2022. And what I'm saying is, when you grew up, these traditions were suppressed. And now we're in a time of access where these traditions, for better or worse, are being seen in a way that they're needed again. Not that there was a time where they weren't needed, but they're being welcomed in. Do you feel that, or are you seeing that in your reality? You're seeing young people wanting to engage in ceremonies with you and things like this?
I do, and that kind of bridges over from what we were talking about earlier, from the Lakota style to what my experience has been, because I lived in California for 30 years, and I've been a member of AIM since 1973.
We have in common, the first place I sat in lodge was Madre Grande here in San Diego, in Del Zura, up on the mountain, and you have also poured lodge there. I thought that was a beautiful connection that we have.
Yes, absolutely. And and that's part of it, is of learning. When I came to San Diego at first, I was a novelty, because there were a lot of Cherokee people out there that were looking for teachers, and they were only able to find Lakota teachers. So there were people identified as Cherokee but had a Lakota teacher. So when I came to San Diego, it was like, oh, there's a real Cherokee, speaks the language, everything. He's authentic, born and raised on our home motherland.
Yeah.
And that kind of created some friction in the community too. The other spiritual leaders felt like I was stepping on some toes. And so that was one of my first lessons of spiritual ownership. I didn't ask to be that guy. I just walked in one day and like, where are you from, man? You don't talk like you're from around here.
Right.
That nobody could imagine an Indian with a Southern accent. But the teaching behind some of the Western Indians I learned thought that the Eastern Indians were soft, because we were the first ones to encounter the settlers and we didn't do anything.
Right.
And my theory is, hey, you know what? We felt pitiful for them. We tried to help them. We didn't know not to trust them. So they were able to affect us in a way you saw them coming. You heard the stories. You saw what they did to us, and you were prepared. So yeah, you have more of that stern energy, warrior energy, where we were just trying to be kind. We have that warrior energy. We just didn't know not to trust them. And by the time we knew, it was too late. So can we find the balance in that? Because that's tribal division energy of, looking down on another tribe, because history has told us this in the words of the winners, which weren't us. So our true stories don't get to be told. We're not part of history. They're doing everything to cancel our stories now, because people have a hard time hearing the truth.
Yona, what do you want brothers and sisters to know about Cherokee people? What do you want people to, maybe it's something that's not in the history books, maybe it's in the form of a story, but what is something that we can bring through that is authentic and real about your people?
Well, for my Eastern Band Cherokee, which I mean, I think Western Band too, because a lot of them seek to come home, is that in our creation story, we were given to this land, these mountains specifically. In our creation story, these mountains were created by our presence here. They knew we were coming.
Wow.
So we were given to this land. It wasn't the other way around. It wasn't like we wandered the earth looking for a home. We were put here for a purpose. And that's why I'm steadfast in what I do. And I am a core root of my ancestors. I feel
Yes.
that. And it's taken me a while to shed the shame I was raised in, and to recognize my own voice instead of the voice that was taught to me through hallelujah, Jesus, amen, happy Thanksgiving, happy Christmas, Merry, all that.
Yeah.
Language that wasn't mine, traditions that weren't necessarily mine. We honored the spirit of the season, we just didn't call it that.
Yeah.
So it really is just coming about to acceptance of my truth. I'm not saying this is the protocol for everyone. I'm just saying that for me, for all the hardness that I had in my life, I was that long-haired Indian with a shotgun and a 9mm on my belt in the back of a truck. Hey, white man, is that your sweat lodge? It is. Are you Indian? Oh, you're not? You got 30 minutes to take that down. And after 30 minutes, we're going to help you out.
This is what I'm talking about. Right there.
I've been that guy.
Yeah.
I got pictures, standoffs with the FBI. No, Peabody Coal Company's not coming on this Navajo land to dig and strip this earth for coal. No more. I've sat on the back of a horse facing 50 FBI agents sitting on horses facing us. Geared up, locked and loaded, ready to go. I've been that guy.
Yeah.
I still have that warrior in me. But I went to one gathering where they were trying, it was in Ward Valley, California, near the Mojave Indian Reservation. And they were trying to build a nuclear waste dump there on top of the aquifer that feeds the Imperial Valley. Wow. All the water source to Imperial Valley, San Diego. And we went to protest there and on Mojave land. And when we got there, as soon as we pulled up, I mean, they were already armed and out by the road. We had to go through a checkpoint, even though, hey, we're we're one of you. But, they still had to check us. And, oh, Yona, yeah, the elders want to see you. They said, come on back to the fire. Because at every camp, in the back, in the rear, we always had sweat lodges where everyone would come pray whenever they take breaks from walking the front lines. Wow. And we always had a prayer space for them. And so, we were geared up, and I got back there and the elders were around the fire, and I came and I felt like I was in the principal's office. I felt like, what, did I do something I didn't know about? No, but the elders all asked me to sit, and they all came and put an offering tobacco in my hand. And the then elder, John Trudell, come up to me and he told me, he said, you're not to be out there anymore. He said, we elders have taught. The bell camps and all the heads of AIM had come together and said, you pray for us now. You put your weapons down. He said, you arm yourself so that you can protect our spirit. And this is what you do now. You pour sweat lodge for us now. You pray for us. No more of that. And that was in 1993.
Wow.
And that was part of my learning, to put aside and to learn how to get over my anger and quit separating myself from those that were trying to join with us.
Yeah, that's a hard road to walk. And so from 93, and then, you know, I know you showed up at Standing Rock. That's maybe in 2017.
16, 17, yeah.
16, 17. And so that version of yourself showing up in Standing Rock, did you show up as a spiritual warrior, as a spiritual protector? What was that experience like?
I felt empty-handed. At some point, whenever my second day there, I was standing in a pond with like 40, 50 elders. I was absolutely the youngest person in this prayer, and they rode in on horses and pepper sprayed us. None of us were armed. We were holding hands, standing in water praying. And yeah, they arrested me for inciting a riot. And so I felt, wow, nothing's changed. I felt that anger.
Yeah.
I felt, wow, nothing's changed. I mean, from 40 years ago when I first joined this movement, nothing's really changed. And I felt that anger, but I also knew that that wasn't entirely true. That the level of awareness was raised, and to get up every morning at the stone camp and go and take my drum or my shakers, my turtle rattles, and just to go stand up on that little hill and sing and welcome the sun and have people come out to stand and honor from all tribes.
Yeah.
And to hear that same thing, other people coming together and offering, and just imagining of, wow, if we'd have just had this unity in the beginning, who knows?
Right. Who knows?
You know, had not Tecumseh and all these others been successful in banding us together. So, you know, it's through that spirit that I move forward with those hopes and dreams.
And it's not in vain. I mean, now we see the construction on the Dakota Access Pipeline has been stopped. And I would say not on the timeline that we would have liked, but, you know, on divine time. And so there is progress, and yet there's still those feelings that linger. I can sense that. I can sense that here.
Well, for sure. And, you know, and to look at, you know, to be out there with those elders and to their story is my story. And, you know, it raised a level of compassion and benevolence in me that I didn't know I had. That looking at some of those people in my life is so blessed. It doesn't mean I don't have challenges or difficult times, but wow, what I'm going through compared to what some of these people are going through. You know, just like we share in Sweat Lodge and ceremony, you know, the people that those children in Ukraine, you know, just because they close their eyes and wish that the fire and when war would stop, it doesn't just stop. Wow, you know, what can I do to help you? If it's just to gather my community to pray with you, if it's just to light a candle, if it's just a thought or a prayer, I'll give you what I can. Because, wow, what you're going through, my life is blessed. I'm living in privilege. And I'm hoping that that's what we as a nation can really dig into our pockets, deep into our pockets of the vast resources that we have to share energetically.
Yeah.
The comforts that we've been given in life, to sit here and to build up the energy stores for those that don't have any, you know, to be those spiritual solar panels for them so that they have a resource to draw from.
Yeah. I know the women in Iran could use that energy right now. These protesters in Iran, they need our prayers and our songs right now, as well. Yeah. And it's happening all.
You know, that's, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Well, the sacred feminine
That's
And
where I was going to.
well, that's what I'm hoping, that we can really get back to honoring the sacred feminine and quit bastardizing the idea that that we're greater than them.
Yeah, and then I've seen you said the Men's Warrior Society was formed to support and honor the sacred feminine. And this is what I wanted to bring into this conversation, is how can we as men not only to become protectors, but to support and honor the sacred feminine.
Number one, I feel it's important that we recognize it in ourselves and hold it sacred and true. That's where, to me, if you don't grow that seed, then you're just pouring water on dirt. We need to nurture that seed of ourself, or that balance within ourselves. And once we come into that balance and harmony, and as we grow with it, as the light comes in, we're just a seed. We're going to grow like a plant too. And just because we sprout doesn't mean we're done. We still got a lot of growing to do. So sprouting seeds is important right now, of awaken that seed. Like my mother used to take the seeds out from the season before the harvest. She'd take the tomato seeds, and she'd take her flower seeds, and she'd put them in jars for the winter and put them in the pantry and get them dried out for the next season. And during the winter, when it would be a sunny day like this, but it'd be really cold outside, she'd take those seeds out, and she'd open them up, and oh, pumpkin seeds, oh my gosh, look at this sun. And she'd set them up on the counter right there on the sill. And she said, you feel that warmth? She said, in a few months, we're going to join you back with the earth so that you can feel this for yourself. And she would sing to them and tell them, you're going to feed our people. You're going to create beauty for us. And we're going to sing songs about you. We're going to tell stories about you. We'll honor the pumpkin people. We'll honor the flower people, the watermelon people. We'll talk about you. And that's what we need to do with our people, our young people today, is to take them out in those dark times, whenever it's cold and we feel like but take each other out and remind each other of our beauty and our purpose in life. We're a seed, and identify our seed so we know what fruit to bear and how to feed our community, what to feed our community, and how to give it, how to make it as organic as possible. And it's through that understanding of what we're growing. It's not enough just to grow, but to know your garden.
I love the thought of her telling the pumpkin seeds that they are pumpkin seeds.
Mm-hmm. And, for me, it was beautiful. I look back on it now, just how poetic it was back then. But as a child, I was just like, there's mom talking to her seeds again. Yeah. And, but my mom she was a master storyteller as well, a singer. And, but her storyteller, she wasn't like, sit down and I'll tell you a story. No, when she woke up and started talking, her life was a story. She took us around the world in the stack of National Geographic magazines she had in her bedroom. As kids would come sit on the bed, and she would just flip through the pictures, and she'd make up her own captions, take us on journeys, tell us what whales were thinking, tell us what volcanoes were thinking when they erupted, and voiced their language. My mother took us on journeys. She took us around the world on her bedroom bed, and she taught us how to imagine. So I learned that from my mother too. Yeah. And like I said, my dad being a preacher, he was a speaker, he was an orator. He learned how to take things and hopefully symbolize it for people. Yeah. And if that's my heritage and that's what I've been groomed for in life, then that's where I'm at. Yeah. And I'm grateful for those ancestors of mine that took the time to invest their wisdom with me, because I'm working to be that worthy vessel to carry that valuable asset of knowledge and experience.
Yeah. And we're blessed to have you here now, because there's still work to do.
Absolutely.
There's plenty of work to do, and there are people who need our prayers now. So I want to kind of bring us back to this present in this ancient future. Can you tell me, this concept of ancient future has been in my awareness for some time now. And I got to say, in that opening ceremony speech, when you mentioned it, you know, from the ancient past to the ancient future, it lit me up just to hear you say those words. In your own way, in your own words, what does the ancient future mean to you?
Going back to the very beginning, the ancient remembrance, we call that the ancient, you know, what was long ago, the very beginning, origins of life. John Trudell, I don't know if you're familiar with the band of the group called a Tribe Called Red.
Yes.
Johnny Trudell does it's called The Hallucination. And in it, he says, you know, we're a people from the past headed to the future, living now in this present and this awareness. And it is about, to the Cherokee people, you know, we're in that seventh generation where the hoop of life is complete and closing. And it starts over again, back to the beginning where there was just wind, harmony, and balance. And that's why we believe that in some ways this earth and its humanity, civilization, is on a self-destructive course to take us back to where there's nothingness, to destroy all these skyscrapers and war machines. And once they're put to rest, it's just going to be the wind and those that have stood fast and sheltered themselves with that light and truth. You don't need a bomb shelter. All you need is a place in your heart and spirit to hold sacred what you know is the truth.
Return to silence. Return to the sacred.
Yes. And it's kind of like the Dorothy Wizard of Oz. Never had to leave your own backyard to find what you were looking for, but it was necessary to take the journey.
Yeah. Or Yona on that bed with that National Geographic World Tour. I love the way that you speak on your life experience. really paints a beautiful picture. And so with that, we're gonna close up this portion of our conversation. I want to invite you. Is there any story, any teaching, any song that in this moment on this day you feel called to share with us, that you feel called to share with the brothers and sisters who are listening?
A short song.
Yeah.
Brief story. I made this song. We don't write songs. I made this song for a young girl. And the first verse is about the young man singing to the girl his love. And the second verse is the girl singing back. And the third verse is the girl and boy singing side by side to Mother Earth. And they're joining their love and visions for the future. And it has a heartbeat. So. Way, way, oh, way, way, oh, way, oh, hi, oh, hey, way, oh, way, way, oh, way, way, oh, way, oh, hi, oh, hey, way, oh, way, oh, hi, oh, hey, way, oh, way, hi, oh, hey, way, oh, way, oh, hi, oh, hey, way, oh, way, oh, hi, oh, hey, way, oh, hi, oh, hey. Oh, my girl, don't you cry. I will always be by your side. way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Oh, my girl, can't you see? I will always love you. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Way-oh, way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Way-oh, 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 hi-oh, hey. 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 Oh, my boy, don't you cry. I will always be by your side. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Oh, my boy, can't you see? I will always love you. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Way-oh, way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Way-oh, 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 hi-oh, hey. 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 Mother Earth, don't you cry. We will always be by your side. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Mother Earth, can't you see? We will always love you. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Way-oh, hi-oh, hey. Oh.
Oh, shoo, shoo. Beautiful song. Thank you.
It's a love song.
Between the masculine, the feminine, and the divine.
Yes.
And Gaia. Spirit of Gaia herself. Yeah, thank you for always being a beacon of that remembrance. Truly.
You're welcome.
Yeah. There it is. I did want to ask you one other question, if you don't mind. How about FrenchHawk? Where did that name come from?
That's my grandfather's that came from Oklahoma. If you look in the yellow pages in like Stillwater, Oklahoma, there's FrenchHawks. That's where the name came to Cherokee, and North Carolina was from Oklahoma, the name French, where it was the redbird, the red-tailed hawk, okay, which a lot of people associated with the French. And so you were the red hawk, you were the French hawk. And but that got shortened to French at some point. Like we had a long hair clan and they changed their name to Long instead of Long Hair. So they just changed our name to French instead of FrenchHawk. So, and Yona Guska, my grandfather's name, means bear underwater. Yona, bear, Guska, underwater. So bear underwater, swimming bear.
Swimming bear. And maybe even a bit of a water protector, that swimming bear.
Oh yeah.
Keep the people out of our water. Keep
I'm
them
a
from
fire sign and water medicine.
yeah. Keep them from poisoning our water, Yona. All right.
That's
With
it.
that, Yona FrenchHawk, Guska, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.
Honey.
Hane.